So joining me now to go further in depth is Michelle Snyder, Partner and Director of Trading Research and Education for the Market Gauge Group. Now, Michelle, let's start with today's hearing. We know there was a lot of tension surrounding this latest stimulus package, which was passed without the support of a single Republican. So what was the atmosphere like as Congress now questions how the money is being spent?
Well, when you say atmosphere, I don't think you mean the atmosphere in Congress, because I think we can probably guess that's not so great. But we're certainly seeing the reflection of that atmosphere in what's happening in the markets this week. So as far as the stimulus package itself, some of the concerns that have come out has been the pace of the stimulus, how fast the money has come back and how much that's going to impact the economy, whether or not it's going to overheat the economy, whether there's going to be inflation or no inflation. The vaccine rollout here has helped control the virus to a degree in the United States, but not in Europe, and we're not necessarily an isolationist country. So all of this really has given the market, the atmosphere of the market, spook. Last week it was all about the yields. I think this week it's all about the fact that Powell and Yellen didn't really do very much to calm things down, because they said a lot of things, some of which were contradictory.
That's a really good point, and I know everyone is sort of watching Powell and Yellen specifically to see what they're going to say, what direction they're going. And we saw last week that the Federal Reserve raised its forecast for 2022 gross domestic product growth to 6.5%, which would be the fastest annual pace since 1984. But we continue to hear Powell say the recovery is far from complete. What do you make of his approach?
Well, there you go. There's the classic sort of contradiction that gets the market scratching its head. Well, first of all, in terms of the jobs, of the 20 million jobs that were lost, only 9.5 million jobs have come back. Some areas have done very well in terms of coming back. Others are still lagging. Maybe they will come back. I know one thing about the stimulus that I keep hearing from people over and over is a lot of people aren't even going back to work at this point because they're making more money at home. But getting back to Powell, he said 6.5%. And then he said what you said, which is that we're not even anywhere near the recovery. But then he said 3.1% in terms of the following year. And he's talking about transitory inflation and transitory recovery. So it's really, really hard to make sense of everything. And then Yellen chimes in and says that she thinks that we'll be at full employment in a year from now. So you just have to look at what the market is telling you. And the market is telling you that it's just not buying it. They haven't addressed the short-term yields, which have relaxed a bit this week, but still spiked up last week. So that's still very fresh in the minds of many investors. And they really haven't addressed the idea of the fact that they're going to keep the gas on the pedal in terms of bond buying, saying they're going to buy about $120 billion worth of bonds every month, and also mortgage-backed securities. But at the same time, you had others saying that they're going to raise rates. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of taxes. So it's a big whomping mess right now. And as I said, they didn't do the market really any favors.
Yeah, a big mess is exactly what it seems like. And it is interesting how your takeaway could be dependent on not only who you listen to, but at what point you hear them speaking whenever it comes to this rhetoric that they're using. Now, we also have to bring the Biden administration into this. We've seen reports saying that they are looking to pass another $3 trillion in spending bills in the coming months. What do we know about those plans, and what are the chances that they will become a reality?
Well, this is the first talk that takes a departure from COVID and the money that's been related to COVID. And so it's a broad policy. There's not been any major specific details yet, but infrastructure and climate seem to be the two biggest parts of it. I mean, they've talked about increasing 5G through telecommunications, rural broadband, roads, bridges as part of the infrastructure along with rail, EV charging stations, free community college, universal pre-K. The list sort of goes on and on, but of course, does it have any chance of passing? That seems very questionable, because Yellen also came out and said that she's for an infrastructure package and she's for this money to come into the market, but that it has to be raised revenues from somewhere. And you know what that means, right, Rachel? That means taxes. And nobody wants to hear about taxes right now, given all the fragility of the market. So we'll see what happens with that, but maybe best laid plans. We'll see.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like they will give us a lot to talk about in the coming months. Great insight as always. Michelle Snyder, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.